Welcome back to Beneath the Long Man's Feet. I want to tell you a story now, if I can. It's a new story, and it's called Not a Warrior. It goes like this. When Billy was born, he was a very small child, and he never really grew much when he grew into an adult. However, Billy was a healthy child, and he liked nothing more than being outside amongst the birds and the trees and in nature, and that love of the outdoors he took with him throughout his whole life. He was a healthy child despite his size, and when he was at school he wasn't bullied, but those around him were. Billy was not a warrior. He couldn't step in and stop that bullying. All he could do was befriend those people and let them know that they weren't alone in this world. But when he got home from school at night, Billy would weep for the beatings handed out by those bullies. Billy took solace in the fields and the land around his house, in the woodlands and the trees and the forest that was nearby. And while there he learnt the songs of the land, he learnt the stories of the trees, and he found his god and his goddess, and they were to stay with him for the rest of his life, and he would tell their stories whenever and wherever he could. But it came to pass that a developer had got permission to build a factory and a road right through his beloved woodlands. A protest was organised, but Billy wasn't a warrior. He couldn't stand on that picket line. Billy wept as the security guards beat up the protesters. He wept again as the first of the ancient trees was felled. Billy was not a warrior. Billy was not a fighter. But Billy was a writer. And he wrote to anybody he could think of to save those woodlands. He wrote to the government, he wrote to the council, he wrote to newspapers and television and social media, and to conservationists. And finally he found an ancient law that was still in place that meant nobody could develop those woodlands. And through his tenacity, that law was shown to the developers, and they had to stop their work. Billy's woodlands were saved. He thanked his god and his goddess, and he carried on telling their stories to anybody who would listen. Well, when Billy was 21, his government declared war on a far-off nation who had declared sovereignty on an equally far-off island. Billy was not a warrior. Billy was not going to go to that pointless war. But Billy's older brother did. Billy wept as his brother sailed off to that conflict. And about a month later, Billy heard the sad news that his brother had been killed in action. The government said Billy's brother was a hero. Billy's brother died for his country. Billy hated that lie, because nobody dies for their country. Nobody gives their life to their country. Billy's brother's life was taken by the government. Billy wept for the brother he would never ever see again, and he wept for the mothers of all the other sons who would never meet again. But he never lost faith of his gods and his goddess, and he still told their stories whenever he could. But he needed to do something, so he became a politician. Local politician at first. He wanted to be a good apple in that bad barrel, and then later he became an MP, elected to Parliament, and he was good at it, and he did his best, he really did, and he did help people. But there came a time when a bomb went off in the city centre, killing 12 people. Billy wept for the 12 people who died, but his government wanted revenge. The government wanted to bomb a far-off land that might have harboured the terrorists. Billy voted against it, of course, but Billy was called a coward. Billy, you're no warrior, they said. And so they took the vote, and the planes took off. And the planes dropped their bombs, and those bombs killed women and children. And Billy wept for the senseless loss of lives of the women and children, and for those killed in the original attack. Billy didn't lose faith with his gods and his goddess, and he still told their stories whenever he could, but he could no longer represent a government that would do such a thing, so he resigned as an MP. And at length Billy became a campaigner for people's rights, helping people get what they may not have got normally, that they were entitled to. And he became a lawyer as well, representing people against the big faceless corporations and the councils, helping people win what was rightfully theirs when they wouldn't normally get that sort of help. And he was very good at it, and he did very well at it. But there were, of course, cases that Billy couldn't win. And Billy wept when he lost those cases. He wept for the lives that he couldn't make any better. But he never lost faith with his gods and his goddesses, and he still told their stories whenever he could. Well, as happens to us all, Billy got very, very old and infirm, and his life on this world was coming to an end. And so he was lying on his hospice bed, surrounded by his friends and family, and just before the final moments of his life, he had a vision. He was lying on a beach looking out to a flat sea, shrouded in a mist. And then out of that mist came an old-style sailing ship. The ship had oars and paddled gently up to the beach. 12 robed figures climbed off of the ship and lifted Billy gently from the sand into the ship. And then they turned the ship around, and 12 oars padded in unison the water, pushing the ship towards the mist. And then an unfelt wind filled the sail, and the ship surged into the mist. When the ship came out of the mist, Billy realised he was standing on the prow. And what's ever more, Billy wasn't his old infirm body anymore. He was a young man at his best. He didn't understand. But then he saw the island he was headed towards, and all along on the island were a host of warriors from all ages of man. There were ancient Britons and Celts, there were Saxons and Vikings, there were medieval knights, there were Roman knights, there were knights from the Crimean, from the First and Second World Wars, Napoleonic conflict, from the Falklands, Iraq and Afghanistan, and many more. Billy didn't understand because he wasn't a warrior. But when he stepped on the sand, those warriors parted, and there at the head of that avenue of warriors were his gods and his goddess. Billy walked up to his gods and his goddesses and he said, "Look, I don't understand. I am not a warrior." His goddess stepped forward and she said, "Billy, you are a warrior, for you have fought mightily with the pen and the word, just as mightily as these good fellows have with their axe and spears and rifles. You have fought the fight for the people that could not otherwise have fought. You have done much good. And furthermore, you have kept our name alive in your world. You have told our stories and our tales, and you have made sure that we don't fade away or grow old. And now as you leave your world, we would repay that debt. This is now your home." Back on that hospice bed, as Billy's life ebbed away from the earth, his friends and his family wept. But on the island amongst his gods, Billy also wept. Only this time, Billy's tears were finally tears of joy. Thank you. That was Not a Warrior. I hope you enjoyed it. Tune in again for some more. Thanks. Take care, guys. Bye.